All right. Hello. This is the front-end web development class. My name is Jeffrey. Sorry. I hope I did not just suffocate those people because it's pretty hot. Hi, my name is Jeffrey. This is the front-end web development class. We're going to start on our recap. Last week we talked about HTTP. We talked about how your browser talks with servers. Obviously, as you all probably know, when your computer is connected to the internet and downloading web pages, it is talking to some other computer out there, which is serving those web pages to you. Every domain that you talk to is backed by some sort of computer running a web server program that is simply there to respond to all the requests that your browser and all the other browsers on the internet are making. So this class that we're going to be talking about this week on Ajax talks about how we can make those requests, how we can trigger those requests ourselves manually using JavaScript. But obviously, before we can get into that, we have to talk a little bit about what all that is. So I also actually want to go back even further because we're going to be talking again about jQuery, which we kind of held off from for a week or two. So we are going to bring back that little Twitter application that we were working on in class. Let's take a look at that. By the way, I think I mentioned already on the stream, but if people are having a hard time hearing what I'm saying or anything like that, then it's possibly the fault of my computer, and for that I apologize. So please do chime in if you are live, watching this live, and having problems with the quality of the broadcast. Not that I'll really be able to do much about it, but it'll be nice to know. Yeah. Anyway, so what I want to do is take a look at what we were looking at a few weeks ago. So if you haven't done this already, please go ahead and download the class materials. It's part of the steps right here to get the class materials on line 4. Wow, everything's so jerky that it's hard for me to actually find on the page where it is. Anyway, you have to run this command. If you don't know how to use Git, then simply just go to the FWD repository following this little link right here and just click the big green button to download the zip file for it. And what I want you to go to when you get that is the when you download that is specifically I want you to go to the Series 10 Class 7 folder. This is where we left off with our Twitter application. And yeah, so do go ahead and do that. If you've already downloaded the class materials before, and you don't have this folder, then you do a git pull from the original directory, or you just do a full-on git clone and just download the whole thing again. It should take a small amount of time. But yeah, I want you to navigate here. I'm going to go ahead and do that myself once Finder opens, because my computer has decided to act like it's from the 90s. Okay. In fact, it's good this thing is running so slow since it'll slow me down, right? Series 10, Class 7. And here we are. So just go ahead and open up index.html, double click on it, it should open up in your browser. And this is what we got. So as you've all seen before, you can say hello, you can tweet something, you can retweet stuff, you can like it, etc. It's a little Twitter clone. But what you can't do with this currently is actually submit this content to the internet. And have it stored there, or have it actually at least have a response from somewhere on the internet saying that it's been received. So that's what we'll be talking about later in class. But in the meantime, we're going to take a look at the current code. So if you want to go and take a look behind the scenes at what's all behind the scenes, then you're going to want to go and inspect the page and head over to the sources panel and take a look at what we've been doing, what we wrote a few weeks ago. Sorry if I'm kind of stuttering more than usual. It's not only the slowness of my computer, but it's also the fact that I was watching the debates, and so my vocabulary has been reduced down to a second grade level. Yeah, so here we are. This is what happens currently when you try to press this tweet button to submit the page. As we've seen previously, the first thing that happens is that we don't actually submit anything. And this is important because what we'll learn about forms this week and next week when we talk primarily just about forms is that what they try to do is send off an HTTP request. And as we learned last week, an HTTP request is a little message that your browser sends off to another computer somewhere else and tries to send data along as part of that request. So, but we actually don't want to do that, because what happens when a form tries to submit an HTTP request is that the entire page reloads itself. It either reloads itself or it loads a new page based on how the form is configured. But we don't actually want that to happen. We want to be able to just manipulate data on the page that we're currently on without leaving it. And that means that we're going to prevent the default behavior from occurring. The next thing that we do is, since we're going to stick on this page and not leave it, is we're going to find whatever we just typed into this text area. And we are going to then, we're going to store that as a value. We're going to get the value of the text area. Next thing we're going to do is very rudimentary, a silly way of kind of just putting something new on the page is to duplicate something that already exists on the page. This is not a best practice. This is not something that I'm going to continue suggesting we do as the class moves forward. Once we start talking about React, we'll understand how things are rendered in a much more efficient way. But what we're doing currently is we're taking something on the page, making a clone of it. So the first tweet of the page, let's go ahead and clone it. We are making sure that it hasn't been retweeted or liked, like maybe the first tweet on the page currently has been. Then we go ahead and set some things like its time is now, and its tweet content will be whatever's been typed into the field, because we got this new tweet value that we saw on line 8. Finally, what we do is we blank out the field. We blank out the text area so we can submit another tweet if we feel like it. And then finally, we take our new tweet and prepend it to the list of tweets. Prepend meaning put at the beginning. So that's it. All we're doing is taking something existing on the page, making a copy of it, changing some stuff around, and putting it back on the page. What we'll be learning about this in this class is how we can't necessarily trust that what we submitted to the server is necessarily going to be the same thing we get back from the server. I mean, this is a very contrived example, but let's say that you are submitting something to a site that has that censors for swear words because it's a kid's site or something, right? And you're submitting an expletive-filled diatribe to this site, and you actually don't want to be notified that this expletive-filled diatribe has been sent onto the page. It might have done some filtering on the server side. It might have actually blanked out all your stuff and replaced them with asterisks or poop emojis or something. So what you actually get back in response might be different than what you sent. So you don't want to be under the false pretense that what you submitted is what is not actually on the page. So what we'll learn about is that the response we get might not be the exact same thing as the request you sent. So anyway, but right now, all we're doing is just taking what's in the field, putting it on the page, and simple as that. A little too simple, if you ask me. So we'll talk about that in detail. But in the meantime, before we can really discuss that in depth, first of all, I'm going to hold off. I'm going to press pause on going forward into HTTP and wondering if anyone has any specific questions about jQuery or the code we've written or anything like that. Keep in mind, of course, this is stuff we've been talking about for a few weeks now. But feel free to ask any questions.
I just want to make sure I'm on the right folder, but I noticed yours had 2 buttons, and then had buttons on the first one.
Yes, that's because I submitted a new tweet, it copied this one, and then it took the buttons along with it. If I reload the page, then there's only one set of buttons. Yeah. Okay. And why is there only one set of buttons? Because I was too lazy and didn't put them on this tweet or that tweet. That is yet another downside of having copied and pasted code in my HTML, which is something that templating or will solve once we talk about that in a few weeks. But anyway, yeah. Any other questions? Thoughts about how this is all set up? Okay. So yeah, that's a little bit of general jQuery code. Of course, this is JavaScript. We use the jQuery library, which is represented by this little $ function that we're using throughout this code, which gives us a whole bunch of ability to more easily manipulate the DOM, the document on the document that we're looking at right now. Cool. All right. So last week we specifically talked about sending HTTP requests. And it just so happened that on every page that you visit, you're able to take a look at the network panel and see all the network requests that have taken place. So if I reload this page, we see, okay. Looks like we've got some, I'm trying to, now I'm at the point where I don't know if it's my browser not responding to me because it's being very slow, or if it's just that I'm trying to resize something that can't be resized. But I'm trying to simplify things. Yeah, it looks like this entire pane has crashed. Honestly, if anyone is tuning in and saying, "Oh, try to quit some stuff," it's really just this kernel task, which can't be closed because it's part of the machine. Something weird is happening. Wow, look at that CPU load. So yeah, don't really know what's going on there. Hopefully, I was running the Flash plugin for a while, and maybe some malware has come through the Flash plugin and implanted itself on my computer and is in the middle of deleting anything. But whatever, I've got backup. So what I was getting at was if I could open up this little network panel here. Nope, not going to happen. I might have to reload this tab or just wait it out. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in this network panel, which certainly slows things down. Yeah, you know. In fact, I can't even close it. This tab might be busted. Let's see what happens if I can close it, open it again, and if I haven't just dug a hole deeper by restarting the entire process. Fortunately, you know, you get what you pay for with these classes, right? Okay, so if I reload this page and take a look at what's going on here, just do a full-on reload. It's actually kind of funny. Oh, I'm sorry. It's actually kind of funny. All these requests are not network requests. This is something I didn't even touch on in the last class, but it's kind of weird that even though it's showing up, even though all this stuff is showing up here, and method is get and status text is finished or something, I'm not actually making network requests. Any idea why? Because this is a local file that I just opened up with Chrome. It's not on the internet. It's not even being served by a server. It's just seriously, just like I can open something up with a word processor or a picture viewer or something, all Chrome is doing is just finding a file on my machine and showing it to me. So all of these things that are showing up here are actually not requests. This is the request URL, quote unquote, but it's not really I mean, it is a uniform resource locator, but it's not actually talking to somewhere on the internet. It's just talking to file so-and-so. But it is still showing me all the requests that have been made and why those things have been loaded in the first place, because on line 5 of index.html, our first request, line 5 says download style.css. So it goes ahead and does it. Why load avatar.jpg? Oh, because of line 18 at index.html, which says load avatar.jpg. Why do we load jQuery? On line 55 and on for app.js line 56, we have these two script tags here that are just going ahead and loading it. So this is the reason why we've got multiple HTTP requests, or in this case, just file requests for this page. So as we've seen, when you are on a website, it is very unlikely that you're only going to be making a single HTTP request. Chances are there are going to be requests for a whole bunch of different things that are linked from that initial HTML file. Yeah, so HTTP is kind of interesting because it's really like kind of a very fast back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There is the ability of the browser to make multiple HTTP requests at the same time to a server. Like, if we take a look at this time, well, let me actually go to a real site to give you a better example of this. Oh boy, this is going to be good. New York Times in the middle of the debate. Yeah, what we've got here is this little timeline here. I didn't talk too much about this last week either, but this little timeline is just showing, you know, in the duration of 10 seconds, what has happened after another. It's actually kind of difficult to tell because as the page continues to load resources, because there's probably some live updating feed of everything that everyone's saying, it's kind of harder to differentiate the distances between these different things here. But some of these requests are going on at the same time. The browser is capable of talking to you know, many servers at the same time, even sometimes the same server opening up multiple requests at the same time, called multiplexing. So even though that first request has to be sent and then the response has to be received before anything else can go on, after that things get a little bit more efficient. But it's still a little weird, a little inefficient. And there's a new version of HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. The current one we're usually using on the internet is 1 or 1.1. But the new one, version 2, is a protocol that instead of sending a whole bunch of text back and forth, it sends binary blobs back and forth. The difference being ones and zeros versus just like ASCII characters, like letters. And that makes it a little bit more efficient and allows multiple resources to be sent back in a single response rather than just one thing. So that is going to make things a lot faster when the time comes. Google is already using a lot of that. In fact, if I go to google.com, by the way, this is all stuff I didn't need to talk about last week. But if I go to google.com and I take a look at the protocol that it's talking over, well, it's using something called quick /1 speedy/3. That's very strange. I sort of would have expected it to say H2, which is short for HTTP2. But this is an HTTP call. That means that it's making an initial call using just the regular HTTP. Hey, here's my request. I'm looking for google.com, and here's what my request looks like. Looks like get/HTTP1.1. I'm talking to you, Google. And here's all these instructions about stuff that I want from you. And in response, it sends this. But eventually it says, hey, for subsequent requests, go ahead and make requests using the quick protocol, which is kind of the predecessor to HTTP2. But Google and a few other companies have been working together to make a faster protocol. But quick and speedy, which you see here, are just kind of preliminary names for what will eventually become HTTP2, which is faster, which is great. I think at some point it says, yes, so I get this response saying alt service quick at port 443. So all subsequent requests can be made over a faster protocol, and all this stuff can probably be sent to me all at one time, which is nice, even though it doesn't really look like it's all being sent at one time. Whatever. Anyway, I'm getting way too much into the weeds here. Let me see. Any questions online so far? Nothing. Any people actually in here online? Nope. Okay. Never mind. Cool. So there we are. I have glossed over a lot of information about HTTP. Here's some stuff that we probably need to know for this class. First of all, there's this method column here. Method get. Actually, here's one post request. I'm not really sure why. I'm talking to GCO suck. I'm not really sure what that stands for, but I'm sending some information along. And here's the information I'm sending along, some sort of weird, obfuscated code. But the difference between a get and a post is that a get is you making a request to a server just asking for the contents of a specific URL. Whereas a post is you making a request to a server with some information that you want to pass along to it for it to receive. So the big difference is that with get requests, you only have a request and receive a response with a response body. But with a post, where is that? With a post, you have a request headers along with form data, which is another part of the request that you're sending, which is just saying, like, here is the stuff that I want you to take from me. It's kind of like, I was talking about the whole email metaphor last week about how HTTP is really like one machine sending a really fast email to another machine and getting a really fast response, which is, it really actually does hold up because emails have a lot of these things called headers. Rather than content type and origin, refer, and user agent, it's more like from and to and CC and BCC. Those are headers, so it's kind of the same sort of stuff. But the difference between a post request and a get request is like you're sending an email off, but it has nothing inside the body. You haven't actually typed anything in other than the recipient and maybe some CCs or other sorts of header information. Whereas a post is like you're sending an email off and it actually has stuff in the body that you want the server to receive. And then the server sends, regardless of whether it's a post or a get or anything, it sends stuff back to you with a body, with an actual response. And this is the response for that thing. I don't even know what this means, but I'm sure Google.com locally on my computer is making use of it somehow. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of the long short of it, that a post is yet another kind of HTTP request where it's expected that the browser is going to send over a little bit more data in the form of a request body than just a GET request. And there are other kinds of requests too. In addition to post, there's also put and patch and delete and a few other things where, depending on the verb, you're sending some information that the browser should be receiving differently. A post request is usually when you're trying to create a resource on the other end. That is to say, if you're trying to post a new post. If you're trying to post a new tweet, a new Facebook post, a new blog post, send an email, create something new. That's usually that's usually your browser sending out a post request. A put request or a patch request, they're sometimes kind of used interchangeably, are when you're trying to update something that already exists, like making an edit to something. A delete request is pretty self-explanatory. It's when you're trying to delete something. You send a delete request. So yeah, that's kind of how it works. In fact, I'm going to try something right now. This is gonna be a live demo of me trying to delete something. I'm about to delete this tweet. Okay, so I just sent something to Jot, which is interesting, twitter.com/i/Jot, with the form data. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of form data. But somewhere in here, somewhere within this form data, oh, I'm sorry, actually, that's not Jot, it's create. There we go, that's simple. Here's the form data I sent. It looks like this. Well, that's kind of hard to see, so let's view it parsed, which is to say, in a little bit more readable format. My status is I'm about to delete this tweet. And there we go. Now, when I delete this tweet, then I send another request here. Oh, you know what? Twitter's doing it wrong. I'm sending a post request to an endpoint called destroy. That's not really actually the way that it should, quote unquote, work. I should be sending a delete request to this resource, and it should be doing the same thing. And in fact, it should actually not be sending me a status code of 200, but a status code of 204, which is no content. But I digress. It's not really doing it the exact same way, and so I do get a response back saying your tweet is deleted. I do have a Twitter to Facebook cross-posting thing, and so it is also posted to my thing. So let's see if Facebook does any better. I'm going to go down to here. I am going to delete this. Oh, it doesn't even show up yet because I probably haven't waited long enough. But whatever. When it does show up, then I can go ahead and see if. Nope. Whatever. Stop watching the debates. Yeah. Well, whatever. Eventually, when this thing shows up, I'm going to be able to just select it and get rid of it, and there you have it. In fact, I'll just get rid of this one right here. So delete. Delete, and nope. Same diff. Facebook sent the wrong thing as well. In fact, where was it? I just saw it a second ago. It said something like delete / so-and-so. But somewhere within this terrible nest of horrible names here, I'm actually sending out a delete request. Now, anyway, again, I've gotten far too into the weeds here. But what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that what you might have noticed is when I sent that tweet, deleted the tweet, when I deleted that Facebook post, that the page didn't refresh. The entire page didn't reload itself. The list of network requests was still just getting longer. It wasn't kind of resetting itself. What happens usually when you have that network tab open and you refresh the page is that the entire network thing just kind of resets. So like, here I am, here's 15 requests for this page. I'm going to reload again, and here's another 14, well, this time it's 14 requests for this page. But what I did with Twitter and Facebook did not require a refresh, yet somehow I was still able to send out an HTTP request. I haven't actually talked about how to do that, and that is going to be the topic of today's class, which is using JavaScript to send out HTTP requests. Cool. Any confusion? Any question? Anyone completely, horribly confused and lost and unable to follow anything it's talking about? Because if you are, then you got another few minutes for me to explain anything. No questions online. I can only hope that my broadcast is working fine. In fact, things seem to be a little snappier than they were before. Maybe it's done deleting all the files on my computer or something. Good. Cool. What do you think? Is there anything else that I need to recap for this class? Again, we're going to be working on this Twitter thing, so if you come in later, please go ahead and download the class materials at github.com/jeffreyhw/fwd. Anyway, yeah, go ahead and download. There's a big green button to clone it if you know how to do that, or download it, download the zip file, and then go into Series 10, Class 7. And once the hour strikes, we'll go ahead and make a copy of that and start adding some additional stuff to it. Yeah. there is that. Any other thoughts? Any other questions? Things people want to know? I'm all ears, ready to impart knowledge. No questions, no viewers, all good. Thought I'd talk real quick about the upcoming classes. Nothing, no crazy news or whatever. Next week we're going to talk about forms. The week after that we are, well, previously I talked about AngularJS. Angular and React, you've probably heard those terms if you're looking into web development and everything. They are two JavaScript frameworks that are used in the front end to generate elements on the page in a little bit more of an efficient or performant fashion than the kind of traditional way that people used to do it with jQuery. That said, AngularJS 1.0, which I know how to use, has been superseded by AngularJS 2, which unfortunately I don't know anything about. And not a lot of people are chomping on the bit to start to use. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But I'm hearing a lot of clamoring about React. So I might still teach a single class on Angular, but not two, and then maybe expand on React for a few weeks because it really seems to be kind of gaining a lot of traction. Whereas Angular 1 has kind of reached its end of life. It's still being used significantly. I mean, it's something that you probably should understand or know about, so I'm not going to completely get rid of it. But yeah, it is possibly, well, it's sunsetting because there's a new version of it. The funny part, the reason that I can teach Angular 1 but not Angular 2 is because they are significantly different frameworks. Very, very, very different. The fact that they even have the same name, Angular, is sort of a mistake on Google's part, because it really shouldn't have been that. They're really just trying to ride on the coattails of the initial of version 1, which was a very popular library. And I'm not sure if that's going to be the case with version 2. But it does have a lot of similarities to React in many ways. So by teaching you React, which I'm more familiar with, hopefully if you ever end up having to use Angular 2, then it won't be entirely horribly foreign. So there's that. But yeah, that's the extent of that. Once I'm done with React, then that's the end of the whole JavaScript portion for this series. And then I'll be talking about CSS weeks after that. So there is that. Cool. Yep. I like very much that GitHub only has 14 requests going on here. That's very impressive for a website of its size. If you think about it, look at all these things. There's a little bookmark thing. There's a exclamation point. There's a little pull request icon, chart, blah blah blah. All these little icons all over the place. A lot of icons here. A lot of styling. This little icon down there and everything. But still only 14 requests. One HTML file, 2 CSS files, 2 JavaScript file, my avatar, which shows up right there, a little GIF spinner, another spinner for loading stuff, 2 more JavaScript files, it seems, a little thing being sent to Google Analytics. Google Analytics being a system where you can track visitors on your site, so it looks like GitHub uses that. Another analytics thing being used by GitHub internally, I guess, page view. Some stats need to be sent over there, and then live.github.com. The weird part about this is that where do those icons come from? If the icons aren't available, didn't download as images, then where do they come from? Chances are that they're either embedded into the CSS or they're embedded into the JavaScript. These icons are SVG files. Scalable vector graphics. Oh, okay, I'm wrong. It's neither JavaScript nor CSS. I think it's in the HTML itself. If you take a look inside here and I search for SVG, yeah, there we go. SVG again stands for Scalable Vector Graphics, and it's an HTML. It's an HTML-like language that allows you to illustrate to describe vector images. Vector images being just a series of different points, rather than pixel, 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 pixel. Just a bunch of points connected to each other. And that's the difference between vector bitmap or vector and raster. So the cool thing about SVG is that it can be included inside HTML. So pretty much all the images in this page, 41 of them in fact, as you see here, 1 out of 41, are all actually part of the HTML file. So the browser doesn't need to make subsequent requests for all of the SVG files. That's efficiency. That means the page simply loads faster since it's all being downloaded in one big chunk. Even though the HTML file might be bigger, and even though going from page to page on GitHub, it might have to re-download the exact same SVG file as before. Either way, it's faster than having to say request 41 times. Yeah?
Just put it in context.
Yeah.
Something this size, how many requests should it be?
Sorry? How many?
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, it's really hard to tell. But I mean, I would say that a less efficient page with so many different sorts of resources and links to things and things you can do on this page, I don't know, it might have something more like maybe 10 JavaScript files. Like I said, there are 41 SVGs on this page. That might be another 41 requests for each individual image. CSS files, maybe for the header there might be one CSS file. For this list there might be another CSS file. For this footer there might be another. So that's the sort of inefficiency that I'm talking about that GitHub seems to have solved by only providing you with 1 or 2 CSS or JavaScript files each. They're very good at sort of packing that together. And there are tools that they use to help kind of compress it all into one thing. And I will be talking about those a little bit later, specifically when we get into talking about React. So yeah, good on that. Okay, let's get started with Ajax. Okay, so this is the front-end web development class. Today's class is on Ajax. What does Ajax stand for? Ajax stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. It's kind of a weird misnomer in a few different ways. It doesn't really describe what you're actually trying to do. A better name for it would be JavaScript requests. JavaScript HTTP requests. There's another way of saying it, XHR, XML HTTP requests. No, that's not good either. It has the word XML in it. Okay, let's break it down. Let's start with asynchronous. Asynchronous means record timing protocol operation begins upon receipt of an indication that proceed. Wow. Okay. Well, this is better. Not going at the same rate or exactly together with something else. So going at different paces. Let's talk about a synchronous action. Okay. I think about a synchronous action. I am moving my hand to the left. Every move that I make is like one after another and everything, right? There's not like all of a sudden my hand is here and then all of a sudden it's over there. It's that I can track every single movement that I'm making here. Asynchronous action is more like the ground receiving a whole bunch of steps that I'm taking. It's not receiving that I'm like kind of sliding across like some sort of slug along the screen. It's only receiving little bits of like something has happened and then something has happened later down the line. This metaphor sucks. Let's get a little bit more into it. The idea behind asynchronous programming is that you're able to write code that listens for something that's going to happen down the line, somewhere down the line at an indeterminate amount of time. It's the difference between your code having to sit and sleep and wait for something to happen and going, is it happening now? 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 Instead of that, it simply is able to set a listener, if you will, an event listener, for something happening down the line, and then it goes ahead and does it. If that sounds familiar, then it's because we've actually done it before. We've done some asynchronous programming when we talked about our Twitter thing. Some asynchronous listeners have just been set up by loading this page in the first place. Going over here into app.js, you'll see that I've got on line 5, and on line 32, and on line 36, I have this, and 40, I have this on call. And this on call is setting up an event listener. It's listening for sometime down the road a click on something called tweets, or a key up on something called text area, or a submit on a form. So that means that this code isn't immediately running. It's going to run somewhere down the line, And in the meantime, we're not like making some sort of loop, like some sort of while loop going, is it happening, is it happening, is it happening, is it happening? No, we don't have to do that sort of thing. We don't have to go like every millisecond or so check to see if a click has been performed. That would be synchronous, and that would suck. So instead, what we're doing is going ahead and just setting up traps, if you will, and just waiting for things to run into them, right? So that's kind of how it works. That's the difference between asynchronous and synchronous. So that's Ajax. Next, JavaScript. The reason I'm calling Ajax a little bit of a misnomer is because even though you trigger Ajax with JavaScript, it's not necessarily the JavaScript that's doing it. It's the browser that is sending out that request. But I guess the idea is that you can only trigger these sorts of requests using JavaScript, so that's why it's part of the term. And that is an English word, which is a conjunction. It joins two nouns together. Finally, XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. It is indeed an acronym within another acronym. XML, Extensible Markup Language, is one way of representing data, just data. Like if I was to send something over to a server and receive information back, it might be in XML format. What does XML look like? Well, interestingly enough, it looks a lot like HTML. Here's HTML. It's got HTML element, head, body, form, section. Let's take a look at an XML file. Is this going to work? Or is it feed? Okay, here we go. Here's an XML feed. 1 second. Trying to click the feed button. That's not working. Nope, that's not working either. Hello? There we go. Here's an XML file. It looks pretty similar to HTML if you take a look at it. The only thing is that all the tags are different. And also there's this weird question mark up here. But you know, we got channel, title, atom, colon, link, description, blah, blah, blah. This is a language which looks very similar to HTML, but it's structured in any way that you want, that is to say extensively, to send any sort of information that you want. These elements, these names like title, link, comments, pub date, they could be whatever you want. It's really just whatever you set up in order for the server to receive what it needs, and vice versa, for the server to send over whatever your computer is expecting. That's why it's called XML, Extensible Markup Language. And HTML is not XML in some weird ways, but at one point it used to be a subset of XML called XHTML, which we don't use anymore, but it was definitely something because they're so similar in the way that they look. Anyway, having said all that, for the vast majority of internet communication, people don't use XML to communicate anymore. So sorry. even though you got this whole thing right here and it looks pretty straightforward, like you've got, I want to send over a new piece of content. So I'm going to have a new item, which has a title and a link and the comments and the date that it was published and the category and description stuff. It's not the way that people usually send information over. Instead, the way that people submit information from a server to a browser and back and forth and everything is using JSON, JavaScript Object Notation, which this makes it a lot more confusing and terrible than it really should be. Let's take a look at a JSON example. There we go. Here we go. And if this looks familiar, that's because we've used it in class before. I demonstrated in the second week of our little JavaScript instruction about how to create an object in JavaScript. And just go figure, this is called JavaScript Object Notation. It's all about being able to have these curly brackets that have a whole bunch of terms inside them that have names associated with them, or values with names associated. Name, value. Title is example. Gloss div, this is not indented properly. It really should be on the same line as title for some stupid reason. Anyway, that's an object inside here, and gloss list is yet another object. This is terrible. I hate this site. Let's talk about something else. Well, do I have any objects as examples in this thing? No, I don't. Maybe if I went back a few classes to like maybe class 5, I'd have an example. Wait for this thing to open up. Not going to do it, huh? Oh, there we go. Yeah, here we go. Here's an object. Perfect. Let's skip these 3 lines. We usually don't like to have numbers as keys inside objects, so I'm going to skip that. I was just trying to demonstrate that it's possible. But here we go. Name, Jeffrey. Age, 30. Location, birthday. Siblings, an array with 2 objects inside it, and then so and so on, right? So there you go. It's just the idea that you can store a whole bunch of data with names associated with them. Name, age, location, siblings, etc. So that provides, the reason that people have started to use it is because JavaScript has become very popular, obviously in the front end, because it's the only language you can use in the browser, but also in the back end. And so both back end and front end have an easy ability to parse this, to understand it, to read it, and translate it into whatever sort of data they need to use, right? And since it's already JavaScript being sent back and forth, then there you go. You've already got a little, Also, it's possibly a little easier to read than all that XML, because XML is nested in these sorts of strange ways where you've got a whole bunch of brackets all over the place. And in exchange for the brackets, you've got a bunch of curly brackets instead. So I don't know, maybe that's better or worse. You decide. But yeah, either way, this is the way that people usually send information back and forth using Ajax. And so a better name for it would really be Ajaj, but that isn't as, that's not a fun acronym. Yes. Cool. So there we go. That is what Ajax is. Or I haven't really even explained it, have I? Ajax is simply calling out in your JavaScript to make an HTTP request and eventually listen for the response. So it's really just sending out a thing and setting up an event listener to wait for the response to be received. So there you go. Now, you can do that just writing it in general JavaScript code in your browser without the use of jQuery. You might not need jQuery.com. You might not need jQuery. It's a nice message. Sometimes it's a little misguided because let's take a look at Ajax. Let's make a request in plain old JavaScript in Internet Explorer 9 and above. That's a lot of code, and it's actually kind of difficult to read. We have to create some sort of new thing called an XML HTTP request. Then we have to open that request. Then we have to set an event listener for onload, or also another event listener for onerror, and then go ahead and send that request. And if the request status is this, then blah, 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 otherwise do that. That's a little ugly. That's a whole lot of code. jQuery, if you're using it, makes things simpler. You say $.Ajax, and you pass in an object with a few options, such as what kind of method you're trying to set. Is it a GET request? Is it a POST request, etc.? What URL are you talking to? That's pretty obvious. You have to talk to somewhere on the internet. What happens during success and what happens during error? This syntax is actually a little out of date. People do this in a slightly different way, but it's still pretty straightforward. And I'll demonstrate, obviously, the right way to do it. But there you go. How is this asynchronous code? Well, the millisecond, possibly close to the nanosecond, that you call this Ajax function, it sends out a request immediately. But we have to remember, HTTP is a two-way street. We send out a request and then we get a response. So what happens later, sometime later, within a few milliseconds, hopefully not a few seconds, because that would be a very slow server, is that one of these two functions will get called, right? So that's the asynchronous portion. We're setting up these functions, we're creating them in order to be called sometime later down the line. So there you go. That is where the asynchronous stuff comes in. So all that said, I think we understand that this is kind of the code that we're going to be writing here. So my next question for you guys is, where do you think it's a good idea to put the Ajax inside this app.js thing? Where do you think that would come in handy? What are we actually trying to do in this file? I would say no. I don't really think that we need to start immediately sending out like a tweet. Well, the way that Twitter works is that the tweet doesn't show up on the site until you press the tweet button. So we don't need to be sending out an HTTP request every single time we type in a character. I think that would be overkill. There are some pretty cool chat clients that do actually like show what you're typing as you're typing it, but that's a little precarious because you might not want to show everyone what you're in the middle of typing. That's why things like iMessage or Facebook Messenger or whatever else show you a little like so and so is typing ... You know, that is one Ajax request that is being sent immediately when you start typing stuff. But another one is sent once you actually are ready. Once you actually press the submit button to send that stuff. So I think I just answered the question. It's going to be somewhere within this function in which we are submitting the form, right? And it really could be anywhere, but let's take a look again at what we're doing here. First of all, again, we're preventing the default behavior, which is, again, like I was saying earlier, that we're not, in this form, the way that a form is set up in HTML, even without any JavaScript whatsoever, this form could send out an HTTP request. But it would result in the page being refreshed. It would result in an entire page reload. And for user experience reasons, we don't want that to happen. You know, also, due to the fact that we're not actually storing these tweets locally or anything, reloading the page means all our previous tweets that we just created would disappear, which is, well, it's not an actual real-world problem, because when you load up Twitter, your tweets are loaded up because they're stored on Twitter's servers and everything, but whatever. Either way, what I'm trying to get at is we prevent that from happening. So we get the value. At this point, we get a new tweet. I think that right here on line 9, between line 8 and 10, is a good place to make that Ajax request, because it's right at the point where we have all the information we need to send out the tweet, which is the value of the new tweet that we're going to submit. But it's before we start trying to create something new on the document to represent that a tweet has been posted. Because as far as we know, maybe a tweet won't have been posted. Maybe the server's down. Maybe we've lost internet connectivity. Maybe there's a whole bunch of different reasons why our request failed. So we only actually want to do all this subsequent stuff, cloning a thing, changing its content around, and obviously putting it on the page until we know that it's been received by the server. Again, we don't want to give anyone a false impression that something has been sent when it actually has not been. Okay? Okay. Cool. Here's another thing that I probably should have talked about in the recap, which is if you were here last week, then you're all set up with a nearly freespeech.net account. And hopefully it hasn't, or your free trial hasn't expired, and you still have that 2-cent little incentive that gave you to start developing stuff. If not, then you can go ahead and do that real quick, or you don't have to. It's not a big deal. You can just follow along with what I'm doing on screen. But really freespeech.net. If you have FileZilla installed, you can all log in and do all that stuff. Then that's cool, because we're going to be blowing away with whatever you've uploaded last week with some new stuff. If you don't want to blow it away, then just create a new site. You know how to do that within the little member panel at this point. Let me go ahead and log in. A very long password. So yeah, if you want to just create a new site with a different name because you've already started using nearly freespeech.net to host your beautiful personal website, then have at it by all means. Create a new one. Cool. Yeah, good stuff. So what happens next? Okay, right. Here's a little downside to Ajax. Remember how I was talking about earlier how this isn't really this page is not being loaded via an actual HTTP request. It's being loaded via a file request, and that's really just my browser asking my computer, hey, can you give me this file? No network requests whatsoever. I can do this completely unplugged from the internet. It's just a local thing. The only problem is that Ajax has a limitation, and it's for security reasons. The limitation is that the Ajax request that is generated can only be to the same server that you're currently on. So that is to say, if you're on twitter.com and you want to send a tweet, then fortunately it's being sent to twitter.com. If you're on facebook.com, you want to send a post, it's on facebook.com. Ajax requests cross-domain or cross-origin. They exist, but the server on the other end needs to be configured to receive that sort of request. So it's not as common as Ajax requests being used a little bit more locally, more within the same sort of server domain name. Another problem is that this page is not on any server whatsoever. So if we try to send an Ajax request, it will immediately fail. The browser will come back with an error saying You tried to send an Ajax request, but there is no server, so you can't do it. So we have, well, let me think about this. In a previous series, I had a very easy little tool that allowed you to set up a local server anywhere. You know, I think I actually can do that. Let me think about that real quick. Let's all do this. Let me see if I can do this because I just learned about it the other day. Series 10, class 7, and if you figure out how to use the command line, then don't sweat it. Just don't do it. npm install -g push state server. Go ahead and install that. npm install -g, which means global, means you'll be able to use it from anywhere on your computer. Push state -server. I've already done this, and so it won't take any time for me at all. If you don't have npm, if you say no such file or directory with npm, that means you haven't installed node. You have to do that first, and we have done that in the previous class, and that's available at nodejs.org. So go ahead and download 660 current and install it, and then you'll have access to npm. But yeah, you should see this little thing in yellow saying, hey, look, you've installed push state server, with a whole bunch of other stuff underneath it. Mine is simple because I already have it installed. And once that happens, I think you can just type that, push state server, and your terminal will stop responding, but I'm pretty sure that whatever's in the class 7 directory will be available at localhost:9000. Dang, it's not. Let's try this. Okay, hold on a second. Hold up. Everything that I just said might be false. It might not work. 1 second. Okay, I don't know what the difference is, but you need to specify the directory. So it's actually not push state server once you have it installed. It's push state server space dot. Dot referring to the current directory that we're in. Essentially, you need to pass in to this push state server command which directory you actually want to start up in a local server. So what do we mean by starting up in a local server? Well, your computer has the ability to listen on a whole bunch of ports, which are these, you know, not actually physical, but there's a whole bunch of numbers that are out listening for commands from external computers or possibly even from your local computer. And based on what port you talk to, you might actually get a request back, a response back. So we're sending out an HTTP request to localhost:9000. That is to say, localhost port 9000. Localhost being a nickname for your own computer. That means you're talking to yourself. And port 9000 being the port that you're talking at. And what happened with this push state server is that we are now serving this file not via the file protocol, but via the HTTP protocol. Of course, I can prove this. I can go down to the network thing here. I can reload, and you'll see that all the different protocols are data. Let me try that. Oh, data. Site can't be reached because I accidentally closed the server. Try that again. Push state server, reload, and there we go. A whole bunch of HTTP requests. So there we go. So now that I'm actually on a specific server, I can send out an Ajax request. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I just thought of another thing. Another part of this whole class is that I want to give you a little server component that I want you to put on nearlyfreespeech.net, which responds in kind. Thank you. Responds in kind based on what you send it. Now, sorry. Let's hear what I just said again. It responds based on what you send it. So that is called backend web development, where a server responds to something different based on what the request is. That is simply backend web development in a nutshell. And so that's kind of outside of the realm of this class, which is why I'm having you download a file that I've already written, which I simply want you to put on your nearlyfreespeech.net host So when we upload this to nearlyfreespeech.net, we can go ahead and get it to work. As for locally, this will not work because it is a PHP file, and this little push state server that we just started does not know how to run PHP files. So all that stuff that we just did, I'm not sure if it'll really come in handy or not. But anyway, I did want you to download this PHP file right here. We'll use this PHP file to test it out. So go ahead and click on PHP file, download it. It's actually going to be, oh, I'm sorry, it's not going to be a file. You can go ahead and get the raw thing, and then go ahead and like file save as tweet.php if you want to do that. And then you can save it to your FWD thing. So again, you don't have to type in this whole thing. If you're typing in this entire URL, you're doing it wrong. What I'd like you to do instead is simply go here, which I know you've been before, click on PHP file, then go ahead and click on raw, which will give you the raw file, right? And then go ahead and simply do a file save as right here, and it will save the PHP file. You can also just right-click on raw here and save link as, and that will give you the PHP file as well. So go ahead and save tweet.php into the FWD Series 10. Actually, I didn't even create the file yet. Now here's a question. Is this class 10 or class 9? Because did I even create a folder last time? I don't think I did. No, I did not. Okay, so this is class 10. Okay, so save this into Series 10, class 10. Or, you know, just as usual, create your own stuff. Again, don't save this into my downloaded PHP, FWD thing, especially if you've cloned it. Make your own workspace for it. I'm just creating class 10 because it's new stuff, right? And what I'd also like you to do at this point is make a copy of, let's see here, everything except for assignment and solution. These 5 files here. Copy these from the class 7 folder in Series 10 and paste them into class 10. So here are those 5 files I want you to copy from Series 7 into Series, from class 7, Series 10 into class 10. Okay.
Go back to the old folder.
Sure. I mean, these are the files right here that you want to drag over. Series 7. Sorry, not Series 7. Class 7. It's all of these things except for assignment and solution. Cool. So let's take a look at what this PHP thing does. This is not a class to teach you about how PHP works. In fact, well, let me give you a really simple primer of what PHP is. PHP is a language which runs on a server. It is responsible for reacting to what sort of HTTP request has been sent and then responding with some sort of running a little bit of code and then sending you the response from that code. So it's really just kind of like I was talking about last week. It's that little question mark portion between the server receiving the request and sending out the response. PHP steps in and runs a little bit of code on its own, which is responsible for printing something out. So in this case, what are we printing out? So what we're saying here is if the request method that was sent to us was a post, then we're going to send back some JSON, which is going to be all of the stuff that we just received, plus the tweet author being me, and the tweet avatar being avatar.jpg. So essentially, we're going to send back exactly what you just gave us, along with the name of the author and the name of the avatar, which is hard-coded as me. So every tweet you're going to send is going to be from me. If the request method is something else, little else statement there, looks just like JavaScript, then go ahead and send out a JSON array of tweet content, this is a canned tweet, tweet author, random dude, and tweet avatar, random dude.jpg. So pretty straightforward. All it's really doing is just going to be sending back some JSON, which is going to be either this or that, based on whether the server receives a post or a GET request. That's it. No PHP up here is going to destroy your computer unless, or your server, unless someone finds yet another vulnerability in PHP, which is a big problem. But anyway, it should be fine. Pretty bulletproof. Okay. All that said, before we can actually do any of that, we need to write our Ajax. Let's finally get to it. Okay. So again, open up app.js, which is the file that we were looking at earlier. Make sure that it's in the new copied version of your class 10 stuff. And again, it smells like peanut butter. I'm going to do it right here. After I found the value, that's all the information I need to go out and send a request to tweet.php. So it looks like this, $.ajax. Now just from a little syntactic perspective, this is interesting because $sign is a function, but Ajax is also a function. It just so happens in JavaScript that functions are actually objects that can contain functions inside them. So this $sign thing can be called like $sign parenthesis, $sign parenthesis, $sign parenthesis, but it can also simply, you can also get properties inside it like this Ajax method that lives on it. So we're not actually finding anything on the page and telling that element to send out an Ajax request. No such thing. We're just simply telling the browser to send out an Ajax request. So that's why we do $.ajax, because we have to access something that comes along with jQuery, but doesn't necessarily come along with us finding an element using jQuery, because we don't have to do any of that. Okay, so we're going to be passing in an object to this Ajax function, as denoted by curly brackets. One of the things that we need is the URL that we're sending it to. And the URL is going to be tweet.php. This is only valid if tweet.php exists in the same folder as where we are right now. If tweet.php is somewhere else, then obviously we need to specify the entire folder structure. We need to do like, /API/tweet/tweet.php, something like that. But fortunately, we just put tweet.php in the exact same folder as index.html right here, so we're good. Next thing that we need to do is say what kind of request we're sending out. Now, quiz question. Everyone get your quiz things on. I am sending out a tweet, and I want this tweet to be sent to the server and stored there. So what kind of request do I want to send?
Post.
A post request, exactly. A post request is what we send when we want to create something new on the server, and that's exactly what we're doing. So the method here is going to be post. Finally, we need to send some data over. That specifically, what I mean by that is, this is no good unless we're actually sending information over, right? Remember how I talked about how a post request contains that little bit of form data that includes basically, well, what we want the server to deal with, right? What the actual stuff we want to submit, the stuff we want to post, the stuff we want to store. So that goes like this. Data. Now, data can come in a bunch of formats. It can look just like JSON. It can look like that. Or it can just look like a string. We can send like, look like, a string. What I specifically want it to look like, though, in this case, is, and this is going to tie into what we're going to talk about next week with forms, is a serialized version of the form. So what does that mean? What is the form, for one thing? Of course, the form is this thing up here. When you serialize a form, what you're doing is you're taking every input in this form, every place that you can type text in, and you're smushing it in to a single string. That's essentially going to look like tweet content equals hello world, and tweet date equals this, and tweet something equals that. It's just going to be one really long string. It's just going to be serialized. Serializing forms is dirty work, because you have to get every single piece of data from that form, then you have to go ahead and like mush them all together into some weird, really long string. So fortunately, jQuery has a method called serialize. All you do is you take a form, and you call the serialize function on it, and it will just give you back a string representation of everything that's been typed in to every field in that form. So we just do form.serialize. Why can we do just form? Because up here on line 1, we already found the form, right? So we just say form.serialize. So that is going to be what's going to be the value of this data key, whatever the result of calling serialize is. Cool. Great. Okay. If you want to see what the actual value of that looks like, it's not pretty, but it's actually kind of pretty in this case because it's very, very simple. Go ahead in our console and do form.serialize. Look like this. Tweet_content equals hello. If there were more than one field in this form, it would look a little weirder. There'd be some ampersands in weird places. But in this case, where did tweet_content come from? How does it know that that's what it's called? Well, and again, this is going to be the topic of next week. It has a name of tweet content. Whatever the name of the field is what gets serialized into our string representation for form. So that's how it came from right over here to right over here. Cool. Okay. So we have just written an Ajax request. We have just the next time we submit, we are going to be sending out a request to tweet.php. Let's see it work. Oh, sorry, this is my local server. Let me go ahead and make sure that my push state server is still running and go to localhost 9000. Oh, but unfortunately, localhost 9000. Sorry, this is running at class 7, so it's going to be my old stuff. Let's go ahead to our new location. If you are following along from a terminal standpoint, you're going to want to do a control, not command, but a control C here to quit this. Then you're going to go up one directory, and then you want to go to cd class 10. And then you're going to want to run that command again. You can just press the up button a few times until you find yourself at push state server again. And there we go. Now we're running the server at this folder instead of the other one. Okay? Nothing's changed, but when I say hello, let's take a look at our network. I'm going to go I'll add one. Scroll down to the network thing, tweet, and check it out. I just sent out a post request to tweet.php. I actually got a 200 in return, but that's not what I wanted. It's actually kind of weird that I got a 200 in response in the first place. Actually, that barely makes any sense. Let me try something really quick. Oh, yeah, OK. So this server that I just had you install, the push state server, responds to every single request with index.html. If it's a file that doesn't exist, it'll just send you back the contents of index.html. Because it's a server that expects you to be using a technology called push state, where your rich application changes around the URL without you doing anything, and always expects it to be loading up index.html. Really, really great for single-page applications like React apps and stuff like that. Anyway, getting too much into detail. But regardless of what I type up here, including tweet.php, it's going. Oh, in that case, it actually made me download that. But okay. All right. Well, anyway, it seems like the response of a get request, the response of a post request, at least for tweet.php on this server, is just 200 OK, meaning good. Here you are with the results, with the actual contents of this HTML file. Weird behavior, but it's OK. All we really cared about at this point was sending out the request, which we did. So every time I press tweet, there we go. More tweets going on. Tweet, 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 tweet. All these post requests, all these 200 responses. Great. That's what that little bit of code did. You know, at app.js, line 10. URL of tweet.php, method post. Oh yeah, and data was, if we take a look in this little thing, go to headers, scroll all the way down to the bottom, tweet content is nothing because I didn't type anything in. Tweet content will be hello. See, there you go. Okay, so that's what's being sent over. Okay, now the next step, which is that we need to receive a response from the server. Fortunately, at this point, we're getting a 200. That's good news. Unfortunately, locally, we're not going to really want to handle this HTML file that we're getting back because that's not what we want. We expect to get back a little bit of JSON, according to what our PHP file said, right? Our PHP file said, send back this JSON array with the stuff that you just received plus this extra stuff, or send back this thing if it's not a post request. So in order to be able to do that, we actually do need to upload this to nearlyfreespeech.net, because that is a server that can run PHP files properly. So it is dependent on the kind of server, whether it can run or not. Fortunately, the vast majority of web hosts out there have built-in support for PHP. It's just kind of a given that it'll work. Case in point, any server that can run WordPress, if you can install WordPress, that's PHP, so you can run PHP in your own. Yeah, okay, so same with Drupal and Joomla. Those are also PHP apps. Okay, so how do we receive the response? What do we do in case we get a valid response? It looks like this. Thanks for coming. Yeah, no problem. So you know how down here on line 18 we said tweet.first.clone? So we're essentially chaining a method off of a method off of a method. Same thing happens with Ajax. There's an actual method called then, which pretty much does exactly what you'd expect, right? Do this, then do that. So in the case that this is successful, we go ahead and run this function. So what can this function do? Well, let's think about it. Actually, here's an important question. At this point, even without this then thing, you can keep that typed in there, whatever. But at this point, will this code run in case there was an error, in case we didn't get what we expected? Will this code run in case we get an error from the server? Let's give an example. Like I'm going to actually turn off this server. The server is no longer there, and I'm going to now on this page try to send a request. So I got an error. It failed because the server's not there. I didn't even get a response from it. Didn't get an error code like 404. It's just not there, right? But it looks like what I just typed in did show up on the page. So the answer is that this code did continue to run, and that's interesting. Now, here's the next question. Did this code, did line 16 through 25 run after the response was received? No, it didn't. It ran immediately after line 10. Line 10 ran, and then instantaneously line 16 ran right after it. It did not wait for anything to be received because, you know, here we go, line 6, 8, 10, 16, 18, 20, 21, 23, 25. Those are all happening synchronously. Synchronously meaning one after another. When this thing is done, then this immediately happens, that happens, and this happens, and this happens, one after another, no waiting for anything to occur. But do we actually want this stuff to show up on the page if there was a failure, if there was a mistake? We do not, because we don't want to give the user the false impression that their stuff was actually posted on the internet, right? We want to give them an error message saying something went wrong. So what I'm going to do is reintroduce that little then thing. And this function that I'm defining right here, I'm going to take everything, cut it, and paste it, and invent it. So everything that was underneath this little then call is now inside the function that's being passed into that then call. Because I want to wait for there to be a successful response before I tell the user that their tweet has actually appeared on the internet. So that's a synchronous program. So interestingly enough, now form on submit only does 3 things. It prevents default, finds the value, and then sends out an Ajax request. Right? And then it's this Ajax request's response that results in this function happening. So it's a chain reaction, instead of a simple linear reaction, right? Just one thing after another, or single reaction. Everyone following so far? Okay. So now that we've done this, I want to put this online because at this point, interestingly enough, this code will still run if it is push state server, because this push state server responds positively with tweet.php. So let's see it work. I'm going to reload this, and get a response. Now, here's what I want to do. Just to demonstrate that this thing that I just typed in doesn't actually show up until we get a response, I'm going to set a breakpoint on line 16. Breakpoint on line 16 is going to occur after we receive a response from the server, right? So it looks like this. I'm going to say, hello, world. That's tweet. And we're stopped on line 16. But if we take a look at our network panel, we will see down here that I have sent out a hello world, and I received a response of 200. So that had to have occurred before this function could have run. So even though it seemed like it was instantaneous, it was just because my computer was talking to itself. If my computer was talking to some other computer out there, it might take up to a second for the whole thing to happen. In fact, in some very bad cases, it might take multiple seconds, or it just might not happen at all. Either way, we know at this point that we have a response back, and we can deal with that response or not. In this case, we're not actually dealing with what the server sent back to us, which is good because, like I said, the server is sending us back something we don't want. So this is the point at which I'm going to start putting it onto nearly free speech.net. Anyway, at this point, hello world is still in there. And then I go ahead and resume, and it goes ahead and clears it out, puts hello world there, and we're all good. Okay. Ready to put stuff on the internet? Let's do it. If you have signed up for a nearly free speech.net account or some other web host that can run PHP, then let's go ahead and connect to it. And I'm going to go ahead and just drag and drop everything that we see here in class 10 straight into there. It's going to have some questions about, hey, do you want to overwrite? I'm going to say, apply to current queue only, always use this action. You don't want to always, always, always overwrite, because that will possibly cause some problems down the line where you go, oh, I didn't mean to do that. But for this queue, that is the things that I've just decided to upload, I'm going to always overwrite. Okay, so that happened. And now, if I go to my site, jeffreyhw.nfshost.com, or your site, whatever you signed up with at .nfshost.com, we've got this page. And so let's take a look at our network panel and set a little breakpoint on line 16. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. I'm just demonstrating. Again, breakpoints are just little bits in our code where things pause once they reach that line, right? And so everything's fine. We can still use the site. All the JavaScript code is running. But once we reach line 16, the page will pause, right? Okay, so let's do it. Hello, tweet, and we're paused. That is a good sign. If you get a pause like I did on line 16, or if your stuff actually did show up on the page, then that means you got a successful response from your server. Let's take a look at the response we got. Check it out. I got JSON back from tweet.php. Got a 200 for this post, and the response was, hello. What do you know? That's what I just sent to it. I also got tweet author Jeffrey and tweet avatar. That's exactly what I expected, right? This PHP file was supposed to merge whatever I sent to it along with Jeffrey HW and avatar.jpg, and here we are. Here's JSON in response. Ta-da! Great. Okay. Now, I could leave this as is. I could say, job's done. But if I change tweet.php to somehow say that everything that I sent back in response was not just whatever I sent to it, but also but whatever I sent to it with those stupid emojis tacked on to the ends of certain hashtags that you submitted. Like today, if you tweet anything with debates, you're going to get a little podium at the end that's blue and red, which is cute. Anyway, so you might not get exactly what you sent to it. You might get that plus some flourishes, right? So let's take it in confidence that the server is sending us back something that we want to put on the page, not just what we wrote on the page, right? So let's rewrite a few things. The first thing that we need, though, is to handle the response. And to handle the response, fortunately, this function here is going to be passed in an object which represents the response that we got. And I'm pretty sure that this response is just going to be exactly this. Exactly this. This thing right here. In the form of JSON, in the form of an object. So we could say response.tweetContent, response.tweetAuthor, response.tweetAvatar. It should just work. So now that we have this response being passed into this function, and again, this is just something that jQuery does for us. When we chain this then thing on the Ajax, the function that it calls, it will pass the response into it. So we're just going to wait and assume that it's going to give us something. That's just something that jQuery does. So we can change the tweet content instead of whatever's the new tweet value. In fact, we don't even really care about this. Well, no, I'm sorry, we do. We do care about the new tweet value because we do want to actually submit it to the server. Oh, I'm sorry, it's part of form.serialize, so we actually don't really care anymore. Right? We're not actually getting the value. We're just serializing the entire form and sending it, so we don't care about the value of the field anymore. So get rid of this line. And that means that this line isn't going to work anymore because new tweet value isn't something that we've declared yet. So instead, we're going to do response.tweet.content. That underscore is important because that's exactly what the server is sending back to us. It's tweet_content. That's not camel case, it's snake case. It just so happens to be the way that my server is storing the data. It's in snake case underscores rather than camel case. While I'm at it, I could also change around the author and the avatar, right? Let's take a look. One of these tweets, this avatar, tweet avatar image is avatar.jpg. And the alt is RPW. Or right here, the tweet details, let's say within tweet metadata, the tweet author is RPW. So let's take whatever we received from our, response and actually replace them. In this case, it's going to be the exact same thing, so you're not going to see much of a difference, but just bear with me. Tweet avatar space image, because it's the image inside the tweet avatar class element. It's going to be response.tweet avatar, as we can tell from what's being sent back to us right here. See, tweet avatar. And then finally, tweet, I think it's tweet author, is going to be response.tweet author. Note the 2 underscores here. That's how I write my class names, whereas the server response only has 1 underscore. So if all goes according to plan, if everything's successful, then the tweet avatar image and the tweet author shouldn't change, because what I'm getting back from the server is already what's on the page, right? You're all quote unquote logged in as me. Okay. So in order for that to work, we need to upload app.js again. So just go ahead and take app.js, drag it into this right column over here. Make sure you're not dragging it into a folder, that you're dragging it into this main area here, like on top of one of these files here. And then ask if you want to overwrite, say OK. Now, we're going to go back here, reload this page. Hello. And hello. Yay, yay. And if we take a look, we see that we've actually changed the image here to whatever the response was, which is exactly what it was before. And the tweet author is exactly what it was before. That's not too exciting, but it is something. Okay, so this is the extent of everything that we have to do. We have finally completed our round trip. We have sent out our stuff. Our server has received it and has processed it and sent back a response. We've called the function to, that call is called when we receive the response, taken stuff from the response and put it back on the page. That is an Ajax request response cycle. Hooray! So one more thing that I want to do is make it seem as if this Twitter, your Twitter timeline is just lit up with stupid tweet debates, debate tweets or something like that, right? Let's have an update every 5 seconds with stuff from some random guy that you're following, right? Here's what I want to say, what I want to see. I want to see this tweet here. This is a canned tweet from random dude who has a tweet avatar of random dude.jpg. Let's do that. It looks like in order to get this from the server, we need to send something other than a post request. I think a GET request will suffice. The idea here is that this is just sort of a silly way of pretending that the server is just going to be like, it just so happens that every 5 seconds some new person is tweeting something. It just so happens that it's being downloaded. In the real world, I think in twitter.com 2016, there's probably a WebSocket open, which is a different kind of request than this Ajax request-response cycle, where you simply just, again, I talked about this last week, you just leave the phone off the hook and continue receiving data, like constantly. So it's just a constant stream. Whenever anything happens, you're going to immediately get that, which in this case is a little nicer. But we don't have that nicety on this server here. The server is not set up to respond to WebSocket stuff. It's outside of the realm of Ajax. So what I'm going to do instead is set up a little interval. In JavaScript, you can say set interval. And set interval allows you to call a function every so-and-so milliseconds. So I'm going to say just a little function here. And this is going to happen every 5,000 milliseconds, or 5 seconds. So what function do we actually want to do? What do we want to call? I think what we want to do is every 5 seconds send out a GET request to the server. So let's do it. .ajax. So just up here, you can go ahead and just copy and paste this if you want, because we're only going to change one thing or two things around. Let's go down here. Just start with this. And the method's going to be get. That's actually the default method, so we don't really need to specify it. Get is going to be the default thing that Ajax sends out. And the data, we don't need to send any data. We're not actually trying to submit what's in the form. We're just trying to ask the server, hey, what's new? So we don't need that either. In fact, when we have something this simple, where it's only just a URL, we don't even need to send an object. We just send a string, tweet.php. Cool. So this is how you send a GET request to tweet.php. Cool. All right. Now to get the response, we have to do something here. And it looks like what we want to do is pretty much everything here. Everything except for text-area.val so-and-so. We really just want to go ahead and add a new tweet to the page. And in the spirit of dry code, DRY, don't repeat yourself, I want to go ahead and create a function that does this. So I don't have to have it up here and also down there, because that would suck. So let's create a new function. The function is going to be called add tweet. It's called tweet. What's add tweet going to do? First of all, it's going to find the first tweet on the page. It's going to remove any retweeted like stuff from it. It's going to set the time to now. And then, based on the response that's being passed into this function, it's going to set its tweet content, set its tweet avatar, set its tweet author, and finally prepend it to the page. So I can go ahead and just cut everything here, and also cut this. Bear with me. And go ahead and just do add tweet response. So what I've done is I've cut and pasted pretty much the majority of what happens inside, inside there, and replaced it with add tweet, passing in the response that this function gets, and then also clearing out the text area. Ta-da. So now that I've created this function, I can use it multiple times, right? So just give you a second to finish up in case you're typing it in. And down here, do I really need to do this? I would say that this is not brief enough. What I'm doing here is I'm creating a function that just passes in whatever it gets straight into another function. Is that even necessary? No, it's not. I can replace this entire thing with just a tweet. Because remember, add tweet is a function, and that's what you pass into then. Add tweet is a function that takes a response, and that's what this function does. So I can just go ahead and skip the whole pass it into another thing and just say, then add tweet. It's a very concise, readable line. Ajax tweet.php, then add tweet. Ta-da! Any questions? Cool. So I want to see it work. What I would recommend really quick is that in case you wrote all this stuff yourself and you don't want to go into the problem of uploading it to the server and going, oh no, syntax error, go back, fix the problem, blah, blah, blah. Go ahead and just open up index.html locally or your local server and just make sure that you don't have any console errors like syntax error, type error, reference error, whatever else. Make sure that all works properly. And if that all works and you don't have any problems to fix, then you can go ahead and upload app.js. Okay. Anyone need to see this anymore? Any changes or fixes you need to make?
If you go to line 20, right?
Yes. Line 29.
What was saying?
Syntax
Response
error?
is not defined.
Response is not defined. Are you passing it into this function? See how this function receives the response and then add tweet gets passed into there? Is that what it looks like? Okay. Yeah, I mean we could do add tweet here as well. We could just do this, but then the tweet field wouldn't be cleared every time we submit our own tweet, right? So that's why we have to do this little what's the term for something in the middle? Whatever. Cool. All right. So let's upload this and see it work. Go ahead and bam. Okay. And let's go over here. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go. Every 5 seconds, I'm getting a tweet from random dude. Now, weird part about this is that the image is not being replaced, so I must have done something wrong about tweet avatar. Did I do something wrong here? Tweet avatar space image. Dot text. That's the problem. An image doesn't have any text. An image has an href, or sorry, a source, which gets changed. So that's why the text of the image isn't being changed, because there is no such thing. Actually, there is. You see how the text is inside this image tag? That doesn't work because you don't actually see it, because by definition, an image is not text. So let's change that real quick. Image.crop source. That's how we do it. So instead of changing the inner text, we're changing the source property to response.tweetAvatar. All right, and then drag it over. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Broken image. There we go. There is no such thing as randomview.jpg, so it's a good thing that it's broken because it's trying to load something that doesn't exist. But there we go. At least we see that we are getting this response from the server, and that is triggering you get another response to randomview.jpg for which we get a 404 because it doesn't exist on our server, right? So you can create randomview.jpg if you feel like it to cut down on all the 404s we're receiving from nearlyfreespeech.net, but you know, here we go. Anyway, this is a canned tweet, and of course it's being received because the request, it's being received from the server that way because the request method was get, not post. There we are. So now we have a website that automatically updates itself, quote unquote, and you know, can respond to post and get requests because we got that little PHP file that does it. I would implore you to not use the PHP file that I wrote as the basis of an actual functional website. I recommend that you hold off on doing any backend stuff until you learn about some other sort of framework that is better suited for the world than PHP. So you know, things like Rails or Node.js servers or Django, Python, whatever. Anyway, for teaching reasons, this is the thing. Cool, so that's pretty much the extent of it. That is Ajax. That's how it works. There's not much more that can be said. Oh, sorry, yes there is. Let's screw it up. I only talked about the success case, and that is a very bad habit of many developers, which is that they only go along what people call the happy path. It's a real term that people use. Happy path means that you are coding only for when things go well. When the user does exactly what you expect them to do, and you know, type something in just perfectly, not make any problems, if the server responds in kind, everything's great. That doesn't always happen. In the case that it doesn't always happen, you want to be able to account for that problem. 1 second. I'm looking. There are two methods that we could chain onto this, and I forget if it's .catch. No, it's .fail, isn't it? Yeah, it's .fail. When the deferred object is redirected. Yes. Okay. So chaining on the .then, we can also chain another thing called .fail. .fail doesn't immediately mean fail, right? But it says when it fails, then cause something to happen, like okay. So if something goes wrong, then you're going to get one of those horrible dialog boxes that berates you. We could do this here as well, but that would get a little icky. You'd be berated every 5 seconds for like, you did something wrong, you did something wrong, you did something wrong. I don't like that. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all we need to do. Again, make sure that this works locally, that you don't have any syntax errors. Note that, you know, just the way that the syntax works is that we're just chaining this .fail method off of this .then method, which is being chained off of the .ajax method, which is chained off of the $. Right? Okay. Let's upload. Let's say OK. And now, reload the page. Should still work. Everything's great. But now, I'm going to remove tweet.php from the server. So that means that now I'm going to try to make a request to something that doesn't exist. Let's try it. Still worked. Let's try it again. That's scary and creepy. What's going on? Huh? I'm actually very confused as to why this is still happening. Oh, there we go. It must have not actually like immediately been deleted. It might have still been on there for like a second or two or something like that. Anyway, now I'm getting a 400. I'm getting a actually I'm not getting a 400. I'm getting a 404. I'm getting a 500 when I try to send a post to this. It must be that WebFaction is configured to send me an internal server error if it receives a post and can't actually load the script that it was looking for. So that's what's going on there. Something is burning. Okay, so anyway, as you can see, that is the fail case. That is what happens in case I get a non-successful response code, or in case the server simply doesn't respond at all. jQuery will handle both of those situations where the server does respond but with a failure, or does not respond by passing in this fail function. Cool. So make sure that they handle that sort of stuff, because you know, that makes your code robust. Makes sure that like, you know, you're not just thinking that everything's going to be all roses and daisies and stuff, because it won't. Things will go bad, and this is the way to solve for that sort of problem. Is to always handle your errors. Cool. I think that's all I have to talk about. Next week's class might also be relatively short. We're going to be talking about forms. So we're going to get a little further into depth about this whole nest of HTML that we got here. It's got a whole bunch of forms and text areas and inputs and things like that. We'll talk about all the different kinds of form elements, how you can put one together, how you can validate it, get it all working the way you want it to. That will be next week's. And then beyond that, a little bit of Angular and then a lot more React. Or a lot of React. Cool. Any other questions, things people need to know? Are people online asking questions and sending comments? No? Am I still broadcasting? Yes, cool. All right, hi, hello, one viewer. Cool. No, that's cool. It's going to be on the internet forever. I'll have an indeterminate, possibly infinite amount of viewers in the future. So there you go. Okay, cool. See you guys later, and thank you. I will be here on Thursday. I forget if I think I do have an assignment, possibly. Yeah, I've written an assignment for this class in the past. Let me just double check. Either way, look forward to that. Yep, look forward to that being sent out in the next day or so. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.